Daniel Sports Center, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 7 matchup between the Texas A&M Aggies and the Tennessee Vols. Huge matchup coming up here in the SEC in Week 7 of action. You got two teams that are still in SEC contention right now, but in a way you could consider this an elimination game in the SEC. You got two teams that have taken one loss in conference. It's really tough to be a big contender in the SEC when you've taken two losses. So a massive matchup coming up here in Week 7. A lot's on the line. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started with your team trends. Texas A&M lost to Alabama last week, 20-26. A really close matchup, and that was a huge game for the Aggies there. And Alabama is starting to click on the other side. I mean, I know Crimson Tide start the season kind of slow, lost in Week 2 and a sloppy game in Week 3, but since then, this Alabama team has only gotten better. So, I mean, for the Aggies to keep it close, put up a fight, not a terrible loss there for the Aggies, but they're now 4-2 on the season, 2-1 in conference. Obviously, they lost that Miami game back in Week 2 on the road, which was definitely a more ugly loss in comparison to the Alabama one. But, I mean, at this point in the season, I would say Texas A&M is definitely one of the best two-loss teams in the country. This team they're dealing with a few injuries, but they're still a really talented and dangerous team, I think, in the SEC. But for Tennessee on the other side, beat South Carolina 41-20. Impressive win for the Vols. This team, since losing to Florida, has been very impressive. This team has only gotten better so far this season. I really do believe that. And I feel like this is a team that should still be on the radar in the SEC. They had a less than impressive start to the season, but I feel like this team is starting to click, and they could definitely be dangerous down the stretch. Games be on Saturday, October 14th in Knoxville. Tennessee's the home team for this one, and they've obviously got a strong home field advantage, so that's something you want to keep in mind. 3:30 p.m. Eastern is the kickoff. Spread's going Tennessee by 3.5 here, so the Vols are favored slightly. Over-under's 56.5, so you could probably expect more of a moderate scoring matchup here according to that. And the FBI is going with the Vols as well, 56.8%. Series history, we've actually rarely seen these two teams play each other. We've seen these two teams play each other 4 times. And since Texas A&M joined the SEC, only twice, surprisingly enough, and the Aggies won both of those games. We saw Tennessee beat Texas A&M back in 2005 when both teams were in different conferences, but otherwise, this is the third matchup since Texas A&M has joined the SEC. Your stat comparison, Texas A&M 14th in points per game, 32nd in points allowed. This is a well-rounded football team. I mean, defensively, I would say they're one of the better teams in the country, and the offense, couple of question marks, especially with Connor Weigman being out for the season, it appears. Now it's up to Max Johnson. But Max Johnson's got some good experience. Maybe he's a guy that doesn't quite have the same ceiling as maybe Weigman does, but still, for the Aggies, I feel like this is a talented team that's got a lot of potential. And, I mean, you look at the backfield, this is the 66th ranked team in the country when it comes to rush game. But Le'Veon Moss is off to a pretty good start so far this season, so you want to keep an eye on him as well. But for Tennessee, 8th in points per game, 25th in points allowed, 63rd in pass yards a game. Joe Milton's he's been impressive so far this season, but in comparison to like Hendon Hooker from last season, it hasn't quite been at the same level. But, I mean, Hendon Hooker also was incredible last season, so that's just something that's going to happen, though, is the two are going to be compared back-to-back years with Joe Milton and then Hendon Hooker, both transfers coming in to Tennessee in the same year. But Joe Milton is still a guy to keep an eye on. I really think that he's continuing to improve, and down the stretch he could really be impressive, I think. But the rushing game, obviously Jalen Wright is a big name to keep an eye on, 430 yards already on the season and a touchdown for him. So Tennessee is a strong team in the rushing game, and the passing game I think will only get better over the course of this season. Your recent matchups, Texas A&M lost to Alabama, obviously, but beat Arkansas 34-22. That was a very impressive win there. Also beat Auburn 27-10, a team that just a couple of weeks ago hung with Georgia, went toe-to-toe with them. So that was a nice win there as well. And obviously the win over ULM 47-3, but they did lose to Miami on the road 33-48. So a couple of really tough losses so far for the Aggies this season. And that Miami loss is definitely one that wasn't pretty. But at least last week, the Alabama loss, Aggies kept it close. It obviously would have been ideal to win that one. That would have really put this team on the map, I think. But either way, this is still definitely a good football team based on how they've played. But for Tennessee on the other side, beat South Carolina 41-20, also beat UTSA 45-14. Since the Florida loss, this team has been dominant. South Carolina is they're 2-3 on the season now, but they're still a talented team and just such a competitive conference in the SEC. So it's impressive for sure what they did there. And even the first couple of games against Virginia and Austin Peay, this team wasn't overly impressive. Started kind of slow and just didn't look great. But once again, last couple of games have been very promising for Tennessee. For the Aggies, despite 2 tough losses, still a solid team. There's only a number of 2-loss teams in the country halfway through the season that you would say are still good. I'd say Texas A&M is definitely one of them. This is a talented team not to be overlooked. Obviously, Weigman's out, but I still feel like Max Johnson's a good quarterback. And last season he led this team toe-to-toe with Alabama, an Alabama team for that matter, which is definitely starting to click, I think, as well. So, that was impressive what he did there, and I feel like he's able to lead this team still to a successful season for sure. But really for both teams here, this is a critical matchup to remain in SEC contention. Obviously, the SEC is so competitive, and you would think Georgia's the lock in the SEC East. And I will say, though, the West is completely open at this point in the season. Alabama is undefeated in conference, so they're probably the favorite as of right now. But LSU, Ole Miss, even Texas A&M very much still in the picture. So for the Aggies, if you take a second loss here and still a tough road ahead, that would be very detrimental to this team's chances. But even for Tennessee, Tennessee can still do it. They got Georgia down the road, also at home. And Tennessee's only getting better as well. So I feel like these are 2 teams to really still be keeping an eye on. But for the Vols, they've only gotten better this season. And once again, once both sides of the ball click, watch out for this team. They're very much a team that I think they're pretty sneaky, I think. Everyone started to count them out after the Florida loss, in which that wasn't a pretty loss. That was an ugly loss against Florida on the road in Gainesville. But this is still a talented football team that I think has got tremendous potential. And, this team is starting to heat up a bit, it seems, right now. And obviously, they got home field advantage as well, which is huge for the Vols. This team has done incredible at home in the past couple of years. But with that, let's get to the prediction for Texas A&M and Tennessee coming up here in Week 7 of action. Definitely one of the big matchups in the SEC. And so with that, I'm going to be going with Tennessee to win this one 31-23. I do think we see Tennessee win this one by maybe a touchdown to 10 points or so. I do think the Vols are playing much better than they did at the beginning of the season, and this team is only getting better at this point in the season. So I think Texas A&M is definitely able to go toe-to-toe with the Vols, but Tennessee being at home, I feel like this is a game where this team is going to show up and really put up an impressive performance. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe this is a game where it's going to be close, I think, for the majority of it. But I think Tennessee maybe pulls away towards the end, gets a touchdown late that really seals it. But Tennessee, I'm going to take them 55%. I still think this is a close matchup that could go either way. Both teams are pretty competitive and seem to be at kind of the same level. But I do think Tennessee wins this one, and I'm taking the under as well. I do think we see a moderate scoring matchup, but not a shootout by any means, and Tennessee to cover the spread in the end. But with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more Fall Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.